Hello everyone, this is Raz and welcome back to the Anime Dungeon. So, if you follow me on Twitter or if you've just been wondering where the videos have been, I won't bore you with excuses, but basically YouTube isn't my full-time job, so I only record videos when I have the time to, and I've just been really busy with other stuff lately. So with that out of the way, today's video will be the first in a continuing series, not necessarily sequentially continuing, like there will probably be some videos before the next one, but basically in this series we're going to make a character and look at how I would build them from 1 to 20. Some of them will be min-maxed or optimized, depending on how you want to refer to it. Some will be really gimmicky or silly, and just everything in between. So this character is the one that I had been playing in my campaign, but I'm pretty sure that campaign's over. We haven't played in 3 weeks, and no one's talking to each other, so I don't really know what to expect. So I thought it would be fun, since we are never going to play, to look at what I might do with the character, regardless. So, right away, really edgy name, Azrael Blackwood. What can you do? I had to come up with one on the spot, and I didn't know what kind of name a Skypiean would have. So like I said, he's a Skypiean. His class is Specialist, which is a kind of strange class. You make up a weapon, and then you get to make up attacks for it, and that's the only weapon you should ever use as a Specialist. You get a bunch of feats to add elemental attacks to it and stuff, and then some house ruling in our game was going to work with that as well, because the feats kind of have you build towards a very Nami-like character, which of course the Specialist class is meant to be what Nami is, but what if everyone doesn't want it to be a Nami ripoff, you know? So we were going to let people make up feats. I didn't do that in this video. In this build, I stuck purely to what's in the book, and as a consequence, I didn't take a lot of abilities from Specialist, but I did take quite a few, or at least a couple. My career is Scientist. I guess Frankie would be like the closest thing to the Scientist on the group. Again, as I've mentioned in other videos, a lot of these careers are kind of strange, because Frankie would be a scientist, but he'd also be the shipwright. There's other stuff that everyone kind of fits in, like pirate, for instance. But putting that aside, his disadvantages are socially inept. If I'm being totally honest, I picked that mostly so I didn't have to try and be like a outspoken, super roleplay heavy character, because I'm not really good at that. I'm usually pretty quiet. So that's kind of the reason behind that. Weak immune system I chose because he was a he was born in Skypia, and I said he fell, but he was taken, or he fell, however you want to think of it, from Skypia at a young age and raised on the North Blue or something, or some blue. I didn't think that far ahead. And because he was born somewhere that wasn't the normal world, he has a weak immune system. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have picked this because I didn't really utilize it very much in the few sessions we did get to play. And then consuming hobby, I just had him be really obsessed with science, and I had him taking notes all the time, which again in hindsight was really stupid, because most of my roleplay interactions were just like me taking notes about situations and people laughing at me for taking notes, so I probably wouldn't do that again. As for stats, the Skypiean, you lose strength. I know you gain intelligence. I don't know that you gain anything else. I'm not 100%. So I exploited that to max out intelligence, because as a Specialist you either use intelligence or wisdom. But in my humble opinion, intelligence is the one that makes more sense, because most of your checks are going to be invent, which is based on intelligence. So that's kind of why I picked that. As for favored, I picked range shot, defense, initiative, and then I picked will save for some reason. In hindsight, I shouldn't have picked that either, because the only hockey you get with will is the Conqueror's hockey, which is a really powerful hockey, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel right taking it, because only 1 in a million people are supposed to have it, so I just don't feel comfortable taking that as a character. As you'll see as we go through this, I did not take any hockey feats, in fact, besides being a Skypiean grants you observation hockey at a weakened level. So as for my skills, appraise, bluff, climb, concentration, gather information, hide, invent dials, jump, knowledge arcana, knowledge dials, knowledge nature, navigation, research, ride, spot, trapping, and tumble. Most of those are from my class and career. Of course, knowledge dials and invent dials is from being a Skypiean. And then I took a feat that granted me 2 skills, so I picked concentration and navigation. Navigation, I kind of plays well because I have intelligence, but I will admit 100% that was me metagaming because a lot of times we never have someone who wants to be a navigator. So I figured if no one's going to be a navigator, I can at least do the second best thing and pick navigation, so I could at least fill in. And concentration I picked and favored, again, kind of metagaming, because my hockey involves a concentration check, so I wanted to be able to actually use my hockey pretty effectively. As for my equipment, my only weapon that I will ever have is the Rackle V3 launcher. I guess that's kind of redundant, but I think I wrote it down this reason because it has 2 different attacks. Rackle stands for Rapid Automatic Caltrop Launcher, really original name, I know, but I just wanted an acronym basically, and it's V3 because the first 2 failed. Was the backstory behind that. So the idea behind this is it's like a large metal gauntlet, which kind of doesn't make sense since my strength is super low, like I'm talking really large, and it uses caltrops as ammo. So the role play behind it would be I could shoot singular caltrops, or I could open my hand and drop caltrops instead of like pouring a sack of them out or whatever. So my DM had decided that it would do 1d6 and it would have a crit of 2 times, and then it can also be used as a punching weapon because it's a giant gauntlet. It only does 1d4 there, and I don't know why it has a +1, because my strength isn't high and neither is my dexterity, so that probably shouldn't have a +1. I guess I got that wrong. The other one is using my wisdom because my dexterity is always going to be lower than my wisdom, so that's why that has a +1. And then it can shoot 80 feet, which is because of a feat, and I'll talk about that right now. So my first feat was Caltrop Mastery, which doubles the area for your caltrops. Footwear don't provide a bonus against them. You can't recollect them, but it also has a higher heal check to remove the speed debuff that caltrops provide. I talked to my DM and he had said that I can use my caltrop feats on caltrops that are shot from my hand. So as you'll see as we keep going, that actually ends up being tremendously powerful, or at least as powerful as I hoped it would be. And I don't have a lot of experience with high-level games of any kind, let alone One Piece, but it seemed to do a lot of damage, and in fact it might be broken, so he might have actually made me change it later, but we'll just go with the assumption that he didn't. You start with Craft Specialist Weapon, which lets you craft your specialist weapon. It's required, you need it. Dial Mastery is a racial that provides knowledge and invent for dials, and it gives you a +3 bonus whenever you're trying to embed a dial. My gear definitely could have used dials in it. I did not embed any dials in it because it didn't seem like he would ever let us go to the Sky Islands. So I didn't put any dials in my gear for the sake of this guide, but I definitely would have had we gone there. So we took Iron Liver, which lets you drink an unlimited amount of alcohol, which is kind of weird for my socially inept character, I fully admit. And then to go with that, ethanol fuel that restores 1 HP per bottle of alcohol. So the couple games that I did play, I just had like backpacks full of beer or like whatever else, rum, whatever kind of alcohol they had. And I would just like chug these to heal myself. We didn't actually get to fight that much, so didn't really get to see how effective that is. This hockey stance, observation hockey, is the racial version for Skypians. It lasts the same amount of time. It has a lower concentration check to maintain, but it also does half of the bonus. But it's still pretty good considering that no one else is going to have hockey until like level 15 minimum. So that's pretty cool. Minion is the core of why I picked Scientist, because you get a minion that you construct for 1d6 times 10k. I think I rolled like a 3, so it cost me like 30,000 belly to craft my minion. I had him be a robot because a zombie didn't really make sense, and a cyborg seems kind of weird since he can play as a cyborg, so that's like enslaving someone or something. You get to pick a class for your minion. If you don't want it to be a brawler, you have to give it a weapon right when you create it, so mine was just going to be a brawler. And you roll a d20, and if you roll a 20, it's a devil fruit user. I did not roll a 20, but your minion levels up with you. It's always the same level as you, and if it dies and you recreate it, it picks up where it left off, basically. So each time you would recreate it, you'd have a chance again for it to be a devil fruit user. So I'm not gonna go under the assumption that I ever rolled that, but just keep in mind that at any point I could have rolled a devil fruit user minion. I realized that I forgot to make the character sheet for level 20 minions, so I'm going to have to take a break to do that in a bit, but we'll get a bit farther first. Specialist weapon attack is making an attack for your weapon. Since I wanted to be able to shoot, I counted that as one attack. The fist attack was built into it because it's a gauntlet. Talented grants me the 2 skills I did not have before, which I picked concentration and navigation. And then working alone is a scientist feat, and you might wonder why I have that instead of one of the other feats I'm supposed to have. I kind of talked with my DM because when you pick specialist, one of the feats you get for free is optimism, where you give like an optimistic speech to your party to buff them. And that wouldn't really make sense for my character because he's not talkative, so he would never give an optimistic speech to everyone. So he let me trade it for working alone, which fits much more with my character. And that lets you get a +2 on invent rolls if you're alone in the room. If someone else enters, this bonus is canceled and you have to wait an hour before you can try again. So that was a very lengthy explanation. Hopefully some of these next levels will be much shorter, but I'm guessing this video will be pretty long because it's 20 levels, you know, it's a lot of content. So at level 2, not much here changed. Nothing here changed, in fact. No damage increases. The only thing that changed is I grabbed the Devil Fruit Research feat. So the backstory of my character was that he was fascinated by devil fruit powers, and he wanted to research as much as he could about devil fruits and eventually become someone like Vegapunk in the world. So this plays right into that. Right off the bat at level 2, I have a 50% chance to correctly identify the power of a devil fruit. And this is like, you find a devil fruit in a treasure chest, I can look at it and I have a 50% chance to know what it does, which is crazy since you randomize what they do. Of course, the DM, what he's supposed to do is even if you fail, he doesn't tell you that you failed. He just tells you a power, and then you're incorrect, basically. So, you know, a coin flip to decide whether or not I know what a devil fruit does. That's pretty awesome. And that's just going to get better as we continue to level up. So level 3, again, nothing here changed. The Rackle V3 changed damage by quite a bit. We'll talk about that in a second. Since it's level 3, you get 2 feats. So I picked Skill Focus Invent, which gives me a +3 on invent checks, which I forgot to highlight, but right here you'll see I put the 3 in the bonus column, which gives me a +13 on every invent check that I roll, which is kind of insane. And that just gets crazier as we keep going. And the other feat, I picked a second attack for my specialist weapon, which my character sheet's not good for that. So I might revise it at some point. But basically, I added a fire attack to my Rackle V3 launcher, and that's going to be my primary attack from now on. So like any of the caltrops that are launched from it are superheated, so they deal piercing heat damage. That's probably a moot point. It's basically just saying, you know, there's still piercing damage, but it's also heated, so if someone's like immune to heat, the piercing damage still applies. And because of that, again with the house rules, he had said at certain points I'd be able to increase the damage of it, so I just kind of took an assumption here and said that this would be a 1d8 at this point instead of a 1d6. And it does heat damage. So that's kind of going towards the prestige class that I was going to pick, which we'll talk about in 7 levels or so. Next up at level 4, you get a stat bump. So I increased my intelligence from 18 to 20. That's pretty self-explanatory with my intelligence-based character. That bumps up the invent score to 15, and it changes like every int skill, which again, the crazy part is that intellect affects defense, so my defense is actually crazy too, and so is my initiative, even though I'm not a dexterous character. So as you'll see as we keep going, like I've said a million times at this point, my defense gets kind of crazy considering that I never wear armor and I'm not dexterous either. And the feat I picked at this level is Combat Expertise, which lets you take up to a -5 on attack and add the same amount to your defense. So like if I took a -3 on my attack, I could add 3 to my defense, or any number between 1 and 5. I probably would never use this. I might use it, but it's required for either my prestige class or my prestige career, so that's the reason I took it. And level 5, nothing changes on those tabs. And the feat I took is Mechanical Efficiency, which on a invent check of 20, I can improve a ship's engine to use 50% less fuel. So if we had a shipwright that built us a custom ship with an engine, or if somehow we acquired a ship with an engine, I could make it way better and use less fuel, so that would be pretty cool. It's a nice utility ability for your entire party to utilize. Level 6, same as last time, nothing changes on the first 2 tabs, but it's a 3rd level, so we get 2 feats. I picked Caltrop Armor, which lets me glue caltrops to me or my friends, and anyone who makes an unarmed attack against this person will take 1d6 every time they hit you with an unarmed attack. So against brawlers, this would be pretty effective, and it lasts an hour, so that's pretty lengthy. And then I took Devil Fruit Research Rank 2, which changes my 50% chance to identify a devil fruit to a 70% chance. That's the crazy thing, is you get to take this feat 2 additional times, each time increasing it by 20%. So you'll never have a 100% chance, but you'll have a 90% chance to identify a devil fruit, which is crazy. And I take that at some point later, because that was like the whole idea with this character. So at level 7, again, nothing changes here, nothing changes here, and the feat I took is just grabbing the 3rd rank of Devil Fruit Research, which, again, bumps me up to 90% to correctly identify Devil Fruit. So at this point, I understand that Devil Fruits are rare, but if we ever find one, there's a very likely chance I'm going to know what it is. So then no one eats a dumb Devil Fruit, hopefully. Or we can sell it because we know what it is. So I just think that would benefit everyone, having someone that has a 90% chance to correctly identify a devil fruit. Alright, so level 8, that's a 4th level, so you get a stat boost. Here I did something kind of weird. I gave 1 to dexterity and 1 to wisdom. I did this because at level 10 and level 20 you get a +1 to every stat, so I figured by splitting it like this, instead of just bumping one of these up to 12 or 14 right now, I could set them both up so their modifier will go up in 2 levels, so that's why I did that. Feat I took Grease Fire, so I finally took a specialist ability again. Like I said, the specialist isn't so much the focus. This lets me ignite 3 adjacent squares within 20 feet. Anyone standing one of these takes 1d6 per 4 levels heat damage, so at this level it'll do 2d6 heat damage. If they roll a reflex check of 18, they can take half the damage, and these tiles burn for 3 rounds. So I'm not 100% sure how you would use this, really. I mean, when you first ignite them and hit someone with them, sure, that's how it would work, but they burn for another 3 turns. I don't think anyone's going to be dumb enough to stand in them, so unless you have some other way to like knock them into one of them, I don't think that the 3-turn thing is going to matter. Anyway, level 9 is a 3rd level, so we should get 2 feats. So I took explosive caltrops, which here's where my gun's gonna start getting crazy. Your caltrops now deal 1d6 per 4 levels, so at this level 2d6 instead of the normal 1 damage. And then I also took Kairoseki Mastery, or Sea Stone Mastery, which now lets you forge things out of sea stone. So the idea here, probably not at this level, but later on, I would be shooting caltrops made of sea stone. And this would be so I could hurt people who are Logias, or I could weaken any devil fruit user with my gun, basically. The one thing that I'm not sure about is if someone had like a fire body Logia, or like a magma Logia or something like that, like a fire-based one where they're immune to fire. If you hit them with a sea stone caltrop that's on fire, would they get burned by it? I think the DM would have to rule into that, because technically the sea stone cancels their power and it lets you hit their real body. So technically their real body would be hurt by fire, right? So I'm not really sure how that would go. I'd leave that up to the DM. I didn't highlight it, but this changed my damage to 2d6 instead of 1d8. So that's a minor upgrade because the low end is 2 and the high end is 12 instead of 1 and 8. So it is an upgrade in damage. And later this is just going to get crazier. So let's keep going. Level 10, all my stats go up by 1. So like I set up, the dex went to 12, wisdom went to 14, and I picked up my prestige class, Pyromancer. Now, while I think this prestige class is kind of weak, because the picture they show of a pyromancer in One Piece is Ace, which he's not really a pyromancer, he just has a devil fruit power. So I'm not really sure how this class is supposed to fit in with One Piece, but whatever, I just took it. And so because of my wisdom bump, this damage goes up. And my feat is Arsonist, which is from the Prestige class. Each Prestige class has 5 feats, so do Prestige careers. You can only take one of them per level, and you have to take them in order, so they're a bit different than normal feats. So Arsonist adds 1 heat damage per 5 levels to all of your attacks. So that upped this to a +4. 2 from Wisdom, 1 from Fire. Okay, so it's not supposed to be +4. I don't think. No. Yeah, 2 fire and 2 wisdom. That would be 4. My bad. And then the fist now also does 2 heat damage in addition to everything else it does. So now we're going to start seeing a lot more fire-based attacks, basically. So at level 11, I picked up the feat Burn Scars, which causes you to gain 10 heat resistance, so there it is. So now my character is going to take less fire damage. Don't know how effective that will be. That would be entirely dependent on your DM sending people who use fire attacks against you. 12. This would be a 3 and a 4 level, so you gain your 2 stat points. I bumped both of these up to increase the modifier. And why did that change? Oh, probably because of a feat, I'm guessing. So I took Insight Defense, which lets you add your Wisdom modifier to your defense, as well as, it's in the book it says as well as your Dexterity, but what it really means is as well as whatever stat you're using for defense. So that lets me use my Int of 6 and my Wisdom of 2 and add that to my defense. So that's pretty nice. My defense is a healthy +23, so it's going to be pretty hard to hit this guy even though he doesn't have armor. And the damage went up again because it is every 4 levels for the explosive caltrops. Now my shots do 3d6. And I think that's it for level 12. Level 13, I took the feat Healing Flames, which lets you gain the healing skill. You treat it as a secondary skill. And you get a +5 on heal checks that involve cauterizing or treating burns. I didn't write it down on the bonus column because of that, But as you can see now, I have the heal skill. It's based on wisdom, which is a +2 for me, so that's a 9 on heal when I didn't even have it before, so that's pretty good. I might be able to save some people with that. At level 14, nothing here changes, nothing there changes. I got the last feat for the Pyromancer, which is Hellfire. It lets you light 5 random squares adjacent to you on fire, or it actually covers them in lava in this case. The description in the book is that you stick your weapon straight down and inject fire energy into the ground. I'm not really sure how that would work with my weapon, but I'm just going with what it says. Enemies in these spaces take 10d6 heat damage, which is a lot of damage. But again, the kind of negative size, it's 5 random squares, so I assume your DM picks what ones they are, or you roll for them or something. God, I just keep ruining this. And you can roll a reflex 10 plus your level to half the damage. So they'd have to roll a 24 reflex check to half the damage. And on top of that, the lava cools the next turn, and anyone who got hurt by this has a 25% chance to have a limb disabled by the cooling lava. So this could actually change some fights significantly if you hit people with it. Otherwise, it's obviously useless. So next level, I am level 15, which lets me take my prestige career, which is Tinkerer. I changed these, right? Yeah. Okay. So the Tinkerer basically gives you a bunch of crafting abilities. They don't do anything else besides craft. So the Tinker feat I took is Overclock Weaponry, which I think you can only use on your weapons, and you can only use it once, so you better roll well, basically, or it's not going to be too great, especially on a specialist, depending on how your DM rules about recreating your weapon. Basically, you get to choose a damage type, and then based on a roll you'll do, it'll add that amount of damage of that type to your weapon. Of course, I picked fire to further my fire damage. This might not make sense to some of you. I wrote it in a way that makes sense to me. Basically, what this says is you do an invent check, -22, divided by 3, rounded down. And that's the amount of bonus damage you do. So at this level, my invent skill is at 25. I rolled a 15, so that means I rolled a 40 for my invent check. So then we -22, that leaves us with 18, and we divide by 3, which leaves us with 6. So I get to add 6 heat damage to my weapon, which is reflected here. So now my weapon has a +11 heat damage on top of everything else that I have, because remember, this activates every 5 levels, so now I have 3 additional heat damage. And then my wisdom is a +3 at this point, right? No, it's a +2. I checked all this math, so I'm not going to worry about that, but so an extra 6 heat damage on every attack, my fist and my shots, so that's pretty good. And that's permanent. Blazing Weaponry is, it's a specialist ability, which is crazy. I took a specialist ability, but it lets you ignite your weapon or your friend's weapon, causing it to deal an additional 2 heat damage, lasts till combat ends. I'm not sure how much this would actually help me, but, you know, another 2 heat damage on top of the 13 heat damage I already do on every hit, so that'd be pretty good, I guess. Or I can help my friends out doing heat damage. So level 16, that would be a 4 and a 2. The 2 doesn't matter because my sheet does that automatically. So I put my 2 points into Wisdom to bump up that modifier since that directly controls my attack. As such, this went up. And since it's every 4 levels, my damage of exploding Caltrops goes up. So now I do 46 plus 12 every shot. Now, I don't know if that's a lot. It sounds like a lot to me, but I don't know if it's a lot in context of this game. But the other thing to consider is that I have a rank 19 in my range shot, and you gain extra attacks based on that rank. I think by this point in the game I can make 3 or 4 attacks every turn. So that's 46 plus 12, 3 to 4 times a turn. That's a lot of damage. So I imagine enemies in this game must just have like shitloads of health to deal with this kind of damage output. Like, I'm not even the highest damage dealing character. A swordsman or a brawler could do like way more than that probably. So for my feat, I took Wormhole Generator, which is useless in my opinion, but I had to take it. It's the Tinker feat. Using some scrap metal, you can create a set of teleport pads. You roll an invent check and multiply that by 5, and that's how far apart they can be from each other. Stepping on one teleports you to the other instantly, and you maintain your momentum. And they last until combat ends. So outside of combat, I guess they aren't useful. They aren't like a role-playing thing. But I guess you could like push your enemy into one and like throw them off the side of the ship with it or something. I don't know. That's why I don't really think it's useful. I guess if you... No, because it only lasts in combat, so I'm not sure. I was going to say you could like set them up before combat and then use it to get to advantage points since I'm a ranged character, but you can't set them up before combat unless your DM says you can, so yeah, I'm not really sure how I would use that. 17th level. Not much changes, just get another feat. This is again a Tinker feat, which lets me craft a rebreather out of 11 pounds of sea stone. This allows anyone to breathe underwater. It specifically mentions devil fruit users though, and basically, you know, they're in the ocean, so they're already in trouble. And then this is made of sea stone, so that's just like making it worse. But the benefit is that they won't drown, at least. They'll feel weak, and they won't be able to use their powers, but they won't drown, at least. Level 18, nothing should change on those tabs. But we get 2 feats. I take the Tinker feat, Automated Medical Station. Now this one I would love to use. It's such a good utility ability. And using scrap metal lets you craft a machine that heals 10% of anyone's health, not enemies, anyone of you or your friend's health at the start of their turn. It affects a 10 by 10 area around it, and it lasts an invent check divided by 5 rounded down turns before burning out. So you might get screwed by this, or it might last like 4 turns. Maybe more than that. That was stupid math based on a D20. I forgot by this point I have like a plus 25 in invent, so yeah, it could last a while. I guess that would be 9 turns at max if I rolled a 20. And then I took the last fire-based ability on the specialist, which is Fiery Steps, which has a full round action. I can move my normal distance of 30 feet. Any space I walk through is affected by Grease Fire, and I can't walk through my enemies or my friends. As a reminder, Grease Fire lets me ignite a space. Anyone in this space takes 1d6 per 4 levels, or 4d6 heat damage. And they can roll 18 to half the damage, and it lasts 3 turns. So basically it lets me light any space I walk through on fire for 3 turns. And it deals a lot of damage if someone stands in it. I liked the flavor of this, but at the same time, I'm not entirely sure how you would use it, because again, who would be dumb enough to walk through fire? I guess if you had a ton of health, you wouldn't really care at this point. And I guess the best use case for it would be to run a circle around someone so they're surrounded by fire, so they either have to stand still for 3 turns or they have to take 46 to go through it. I guess that would be pretty good. That's probably how I would use it. So getting close to the end, level 19. Nothing here really changes. And the feat I took is the last ability in the Tinkerer, which is energy shields. Using some scrap metal, you can create an energy shield. It prevents the first invent check divided by 1d4 rounded down damage before your DR. So I'll give you the example the book gives. If you somehow got 30, the first 30 damage you take would be done by that. So at this level you have a 19 damage reduction unless you have some feat or whatever. And so you would not subtract the 19 first. You would take the full 30 damage in the shield. The shield would be destroyed. And then if there's any leftover damage, that would be hit by your DR. So if someone hit you for 35 damage, your shield would absorb the first 30, and then your damage reduction would absorb the last 5, and you would take no damage from that attack. And I guess it should probably go without saying that they have to hit you for this to apply first. So again, with this character, I have a 31 defense. So I guess I don't really know what creatures look like at level 19, but that seems pretty hard to hit. And lastly is level 20. You're gonna be kind of disappointed this one. It's gonna be very anticlimactic. The feat I pick is really boring, so brace yourself for that. So it's a 10th level, so you get 1 in every stat. And it's a 4th level, so you get 2 in 1 stat of your choice. I think I picked intellect, but I'm not 100% sure. It might have been wisdom. I don't really feel like checking that, but it's one of those two, just know that. So I end up with a +7 modifier on my intelligence and a +4 on wisdom. That's pretty good, I'd say. My equipment damage changes, of course, because this is a 5th level and a 4th level. So my explosive caltrops deal an additional d6, up to 5d6 at this point, and I deal another point of heat damage, up to 4 heat damage based on the arsonist ability. So that's a +14 on my shot and a +10 on my fist. I probably would never attack something with my fist at this point because it would deal such a pathetic amount of damage, but the option's there is the key point. And I think that's all that really happened here. And then the feat I picked, like I said, really boring. I picked Blooded, which grants you 2 HP per level, and it applies retroactively, of course, so it actually ends up being quite a chunk of hit points that I gain. So I guess that's the life of Azrael Blackwood. He would have become a pyromancer tinkerer. He would have been practically unrivaled in knowledge about devil fruits, and he would be quite formidable despite being this scrawny little nerd that has like a super low strength score. He'd be pretty tough to deal with. He'd be hard to hit, and he can hit really fucking hard, especially if you are weak against fire or if you can't block fire damage. So the last thing to show how ridiculous this character would be is that he's also has a minion. Now, I totally forgot to make the minion character sheet, so I will have to go do that really quickly. So I will be right back with his minion. Alright, that took a long time, but I'm finally back. This is my level 20 minion. My character sheet doesn't really work with how secondary companions work, so I'm just using a simple document. He has the name Jack, I don't know why, but I have a robot named Jack, I guess. So at level 20, he has 120 hit points, a damage reduction of 10, 20 strength, 16 con, 12 dexterity, and everything else sucks. He's a brawler that does 48 plus 5 with his fists. His skills are Unarmed Strike, Defense, Initiative, and Fortitude Save. Secondaries are Balance, Climb, Concentration, Escape Artist, Jump, and Tumble. And for his 5 feats, in alphabetical order, I picked Aggressive Stance, which adds 1 damage every 5 levels to all of your unarmed attacks, and while you're in it, you have a -2 on defense. So level 20, he gets +4 damage and -2 on defense. Beatdown, critical strikes, and aggressive stance deal triple damage. That's pretty cool, in my opinion. So he's going to deal massive damage. Devastating Strike, speaking of massive damage, this attack takes 2 rounds to charge. The first round, you must remain completely still. If you are attacked, you must succeed a concentration check of 18 to continue. On the second turn, you charge and hit 1 enemy within 30 feet. You deal your normal damage and you multiply it by 5. The target may roll a reflex against your unarmed attack to half the damage, and you cannot use this ability again for 1 hour. So that is a lot of damage. A ×5 multiplier, and I'm pretty sure that can critically strike too, which would just be insanity at that point. If I were to translate these as written, in the book, not as I took notes, it only goes on cooldown for an hour if you get to the second part of it. If you fail your concentration check, it doesn't actually trigger the cooldown. Next up, we have Pummel, which increases your critical range to 19 to 20. So instead of having to roll a natural 20, you could also roll a 19 while in aggressive stance to make a critical strike. So that just means more critical strikes, more tripling damage, more damage in general. That's pretty good. And then the last ability is Roundhouse Kick rank 1, which lets you make an unarmed attack against everyone in melee range. Each one of them gets to roll defense normally. Anyone who gets hit, this is the weird part to me, takes 1d8 damage plus your normal unarmed damage. So that means that they would take 5d8 damage from this guy if he did a roundhouse kick. So that's a lot of damage. And it's AoE, which is the main reason I picked it. So this guy can just run into the center of things and roundhouse kick everyone in range and deal a ton of damage. And he's going to be in aggressive stance like the entire time. So like he's going to be tripling his crits. He's going to have a lower crit range. He's going to just do tons and tons of damage. All of these are brawler feats, of course. When you make a minion, they can only take class feats. If you want to have them wear armor, you have to use your own feat points for it. So I wasn't super into that, so I didn't do it. One ability I kind of wish I would have kept was Abuse, which lets you force people to attack you, basically. Because the idea with him is that he makes up for my character's weaknesses, so he's super strong and he's going to have a lot of HP. And well, I guess I actually have more than him, but he's kind of like a meat shield for me. And Abuse would make things attack him while I could run around shooting them while they're focusing on him. So that would have been nice, but I opted for this crit heavy build instead. So that's definitely one way I could have taken it differently. There are lots of other cool brawler abilities like setting your fists on fire or being able to teleport up to 100 feet when you punch. So that's pretty cool, but this is the minion I decided to build. And I guess after this lengthy video, that's basically it for Azrael Blackwood. Kind of disappointed I didn't get to play him up to this point, but it was fun thinking of all the different things I could do with him. I'm definitely planning on making more of these. For gimmicky characters, I've definitely got a few in mind, like a giant rogue. I think that would be really funny. And then I might just think of some more RP characters. In fact, I might go on Roll20 and see if I can find another game. Who knows? But until next time, guys, this is Raz, and I'll see you again very soon, hopefully.